Ayy, look, yeah, ayy. I'm in the lab like Dexter, brand new batch he tested. I'm with all the extras, don't try and bitch, I'm pressure. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers. I'm the type to step on steppers, I'm the type to step on steppers.
Of course, let's go ahead and jump right into it. The Miami Heat versus the Boston Celtics. The last time we talked about these two teams in this series specifically, Miami had these guys on the ropes 3-0 going into game 4. But in game 4, they dropped that game at home 99 to 116. Then they end up going back on the road to Boston for game 5. They lose that game 97 to 110. And then game 6, a game that was going back and forth. In that fourth quarter, the Miami Heat were down 10. They were able to rally back based on Jimmy Butler's performance in that fourth quarter. Next thing you know, Derek White hits a game winner on them, which forces the Boston Celtics to a game 7. So the Boston Celtics were on the verge of coming back down from 3-0 up until that game 7 performance where the Boston Celtics pretty much shit the bed and they lost this game by 103 to 84. So what have you learned what have you learned from this series going into this next NBA Finals?
I mean, I think the Boston Celtics were literally on the verge of, making history. And I know a lot of people are going to point to that Jason Tatum ankle injury and talk about how that could have been the difference maker. But again, that's something that we'll just never know. But looking at this game specifically, I mean, Jason Tatum goes down. He's your superstar. He's your number one guy. So he goes down. All eyes are on Jaylen Brown now. He's your number 2, and now he's going to step up in the number 1 role because Jason Tatum, everybody saw the replay of the ankle injury. It looked bad. He tweaked it really bad on the first play of the game. So that's about as unlucky as you can get. So Jaylen Brown's the guy that's expected to step up. He's the guy that everybody's looked towards. He's going to be their leader. He's their number 1 guy now because Jason Tatum's pretty much out the picture. Every single time we've seen him go up for a layup or go for a basket, we see him grimacing on the replay. So Jaylen Brown, he's thrusted into this role. And what does he do? He has a terrible, terrible, terrible game 7 performance. I mean, when you look at this, the 8 turnovers, the inefficient shots, I mean, it felt like Jaylen Brown couldn't produce anything on his own. And, it's one thing to just be missing shots, but being unable to create for your teammates and being able to even just handle a basketball. I feel like Jaylen Brown should be looking at this series and what people have been saying. Caleb Martin came out on an interview, I think, about today, talking about, the game plan was to force Jaylen Brown left. That's always been the game plan. Draymond Green last year after the finals said, we realized these guys cannot go left. And honestly, we know who he's talking about when he says these guys cannot go left. He's talking about Jaylen Brown. And so for him to put up that performance, I think it has Boston reconsidering whether they should really give him $300 million and give him that supermax that he's been looking for because, he made all NBA, but is it worth giving a guy an all NBA, all that type of money when, he's thrusted into a role where he can't produce? And, the series, Caleb Martin outplayed him. And that's the next guy I wanted to get into. I mean, to me, I understand why they gave it to Jimmy Butler. You always give it to your stars, the Eastern Conference MVP trophy, but Caleb Martin played a hell of a series. I mean, this guy, it felt like shot after shot. It was a big time bucket. Whenever we needed a shot, this guy came out and he hit it. And I give credit to Spoelstra and the development team and identifying talent because this guy a couple of years ago he got waived by the Hornets and now he's sitting here up in the finals after having a great performance. Gabe Vincent, he stepped up. Bam, he had his moments in this series. I definitely do want to see some better things from him offensively, but defensively, he was phenomenal. And this team, people really thought that we would be the Sixers. We're not the most talented team. I think as evidenced every single time people mentioning undrafted players, but when it comes to being mentally resilient and having the best coach in the NBA, I don't think anybody's topping the Miami Heat. So, it was a great series win and I can't wait to get to the next one because, again, I think this series opened up as the second biggest odds, like favorites, in terms of the Nuggets after the Warriors 2018. And I really think people are underrating us. I don't expect this team to lay down and not compete. They've made it this far. They might as well just complete the job. So I'm excited to see it.
Man, once again, you got the Heat, the underdogs of this round, against the top dog Celtics. And once again, they prevailed. It kind of got scary for you guys. I'd be going to 3-0 lead. Celtics on verge of history. Everybody's going crazy on the media. Everybody's going crazy on Twitter talking about, oh, what happened to Jimmy Butler, Timothy Butler, Jimmy Jordan Butler. And it was looking scary. It was looking rough going into that game 7. And you guys came out shooting lights out. You feel me? Like Caleb Martin coming out the game. I think he started 11 for 12, 11 for 13. Yeah, he was on fire that game 7, and I feel like, you know, Jimmy going down the stretch in that game 7, he showed up. He had a great game. Guys stepped up, Bam stepped up, Struss stepped up. Even Duncan Robinson in this series, I feel like he had his moments, bar that game 6 that he missed those 2 wide open threes. Other than that, I feel like this whole series he came in and played some good minutes for you guys. And for the Celtics, man, like you mentioned, you know, Caleb Martin came out in an interview today on a podcast talking about when JT went down or he got hurt and he was deferring to Jaylen Brown this game 7. They were forcing him left, and every turnover came from him driving left, him going to the left side. He had 8 turnovers, 4 of them were poked, 1 he lost, I think 2 were offensive fouls, and all that was coming him going to the left. And these guys, you know, Draymond said it last year on the JJ Redick show. He came out and said, you know, we're forcing these guys to the left, forcing them to the left. Every time they touch the ball, we want them to either go with their left hand, dribble with their left hand, or attack left. And it kind of worked out for the Miami Heat in their favor. You know, JB, if you're gonna be a guy that's gonna get paid $300 million this offseason and you're an all NBA player, and you know this is your moment to step up into that 1A spot and take over for your team, he didn't come out and produce, and it was pretty bad for him. And guys like Marcus Smart, he wasn't there either. Horford wasn't, you know, another no show. Brogdon, you know, with the injury on his elbow, he wasn't, you know, much of the squad either. So, you know, it was looking tough.
Can I just say Derek White was phenomenal though? Derek White
yeah,
had an absolutely amazing series. He had an amazing series.
Derek White man show in that third quarter.
Yeah, that third quarter he was trying to, you know, reel his team back in, and he was hooping, but it's not enough, you know, when, you know, your best player is kind of hobbled, injured. It's tough for him to make some drives, and your second best player is just a no-show, 8 turnovers. I think it was like 23 shots on 22 points, or like 21 points, something like that. Non-efficient, and he's just, you know, making horrible plays down the stretch, and it's, you know, it's tough to show up like that for Boston. So, you know, another year for Boston going down the drain, and they got some decisions to make. You know, guys like JB, you know, if he wants to walk out, or if he's gonna decide, hey, trade me, I don't want to be part of the situation anymore, or if they want to, you know, walk away from that, we'll see what happens. But Miami, man, you know, it's gonna be another playoff round, basically finals. Yeah, it's the same thing, but another, you know, series where they're gonna have to come in, grit it out, go and, you know, fight like they've been fighting all playoffs. You know, they've been a team that have been battling with the lesser, you know, depth, power, strength on the team, you know, star power and everything, but you know, they're gonna fight, you know, and they got a guy like Jimmy Butler, you know, playoff riser. He's been performing all playoffs, and you know, those 3-game stretch where he was in a non-show, he was pretty quiet. It's all good. Game 7 comes and he's there to perform defensively and offensively. So, you know, shout out Miami Heat. You know, hopefully their fairy tale continues, and we'll see what happens in the finals.
Before I go ahead and jump right into Game 7 and what happened in that game specifically, I want to go all the way back to Game 4 a little bit. To the Celtics, kind of their 3-game win streak to kind of bring them back into this series. So to start out the entire series, the first 3 games, obviously the Celtics didn't shoot the ball well. The Celtics are a team that live and die by that 3-point line, but for some odd reason, when the shots aren't falling, these guys aren't able to create, you know, baskets inside the paint or in the mid-range area, and so they struggled heavily. That's why they went down 3-0. But in Game 4 specifically, they shot 40% from the 3-point line. Game 5, they shot 41% from the 3-point line. And then these last 2 games, in Game 6 and in Game 7, they didn't necessarily shoot the ball pretty well. They're in the low 20s. And so, you know, a team that really lives behind that 3-point line, obviously it's going to be hot and cold. When like I've always said, when these guys hit their shots, they look like one of the best teams in the NBA. But when they don't, they just look extremely confused out there and lost. And so, you know, for the Boston Celtics, they took care of business. And the message each and every game coming out of Game 4 was like, you know, coming out of Game 3 was like, don't let us get 1. And then they ended up getting 1. Then they're like, okay, don't let us get 2. Same thing. Don't let us get 3, all the way up until Game 7. And they got away with 1 in Game 6 with that Derek White game winner. I think the Miami Heat did an excellent job at kind of just pretty much allowing somebody other than Jason Tatum or Jaylen Brown to beat you. That, you know, Marcus Smart took a disgusting fadeaway 3-pointer on the left hash, and the ball, you know, that was a perfect miss. Like Abdi were talking about it. It was just a perfect miss where the ball bounced around the rim a couple times, and Derek White was there. You know, Max Strus, the guy they subbed in that possession, didn't necessarily do his job at boxing out Derek White, and they were able to steal 1 on the road. But now as I get to this Game 7, I immediately knew once Jason Tatum got hurt, this game was over. There's just no way this guy could battle through a severe ankle injury like that, where his ankle pretty much rolled and it touched the ground on the very first play. It's a very unfortunate situation, but it is what it is. But injuries happen in the game of basketball, and so you got to be able to battle through that. And you guys have already hounded Jaylen Brown for his performance, so I won't say too much about it, but it was terrible. A guy that you're considering paying $300 million, that supermax contract, to a guy that he couldn't carry his team when the true number one option went out, and it was shown on full display. And the Miami Heat, they did a great job at taking the game from the jump. Immediately once the ball got tipped off, it felt like the Miami Heat had control all the way throughout the game, and they never really let up. The game maybe got close to like an 8-point game, and each and every time they called timeout in those situations, Eric Spoelstra was able to rally his guys back, and they're able to settle in, take the punches, and then kind of just deliver a punch themselves. So it was well played by the Miami Heat. One thing that I was thinking about coming out of Game 6 was, everybody talking about how the Celtics are on the verge of making history, and going into Game 7, they just can't lose. But there's always this possibility, there's this doubt in my mind, thinking like, nobody's really talking about the Celtics potentially losing a Game 7 at home. Everybody was talking about how they're going to the Miami Heat are going to get blown off the floor, and I feel like that just put like a little bit more pressure on the Boston Celtics to kind of go out there and finish the job and do something that's never been done before. I believe it was 0-152 teams coming back down from 0-3, and now it's 0-153. So great job by the Miami Heat, but I think I have one issue coming out of this whole series, which is the Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy going to Jimmy Butler. So how do we feel about Jimmy Butler walking away with the Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy instead of Caleb Martin?
Like I said, I'm not too mad about Jimmy Butler winning this. I think the award kind of caters towards the star player, the number one option. And early on in the series, Jimmy Butler was the best player. Then as the series went on, Caleb Martin really got into it, and he was playing better and better. And ultimately felt like the last 2, maybe 3 games, Caleb Martin was the better player. But Jimmy Butler is the tone setter for this team, and it just feels like it was a reward for the entire playoff run. I understand it is only for the Eastern Conference Finals, but it felt like it was a reward for the entire playoff run. But ultimately, if Caleb Martin won this award, I think everybody would be happy for him. Jimmy Butler won. I don't think anybody's mad about it. But Caleb Martin played a hell of a series, like I mentioned before. I mean, you come in, nobody has an idea who's going to be that third option for us, whether that be Gabe Vincent, whether that be Caleb Martin, whether that be Max Strus, whether that be Duncan Robinson. Nobody has an idea who's going to be that third option. And it's not just a matter of him, just the shots that he was hitting. It was the shots that he was taking. It felt like every big moment that we needed a shot, Caleb Martin would step up, and he would be the guy that we need. So, I'm not angry Jimmy Butler won this award. I think I would have been a little bit happier if Caleb Martin won this, just because, rewarding a role player for stepping up like that is definitely an amazing thing. But again, if Jimmy won, and I'm happy about it. So.
No, I'm not mad that Jimmy, he won the award. I feel like he consistently throughout the series, all 7 games, I feel like he's been the best player on the team. So for me, Caleb Martin down the stretch, I feel like, the big shots came. He had some big shots, that hurt the Celtics. I feel like, his shots made more noise than Jimmy's, but consistently throughout the game, like all levels through the game, I feel like Jimmy was more consistent. So, for me, it was good that Jimmy won. If Caleb won, I see why he won. He stepped up big this series. I feel like you can arguably say that he's the second best player. He was the second best player on the court for the series, barring, the 2 stars, JT and Jimmy. But other than that, man, no issues with Jimmy winning.
My only issue with Jimmy Butler winning this Eastern Conference Finals MVP trophy is I just don't understand what the NBA want this award to be. They implemented the Conference Finals MVP trophy last season. We saw Steph Curry win it for the Western Conference. We saw Jason Tatum win it for the Eastern Conference. And of course, you're always going to want to reward the best player on the team that's going to the NBA Finals. But I feel like this award should be a little bit different. Obviously, if Jimmy Butler's playing tremendous basketball throughout the course of the series, then of course you rightfully so you give him that award. But I feel like Caleb Martin has been definitely the most consistent player for the Miami Heat in this specific series. Caleb Martin averaged 19 points, 6 rebounds, shooting 60, 50, and 88 from the field. You look at those numbers, you hear those numbers. Let me compare those numbers to Jaylen Brown's numbers. Jaylen Brown averaged 19 points and 6 rebounds himself, but shooting 42% from the field, 16% from three, and 67% from the free throw line. And so it's just like, are we always going to reward the best player on the winning team, or are we going to reward the player that had the most impact on the winning team? And I feel like Caleb Martin's impact was a lot more than Jimmy Butler's impact throughout the course of this series. Yes, Jimmy Butler had his fun in the first 3 games where he was, hitting big shot after big shot, taunting the Boston Celtics consistently and going after guys like Al Horford and Marcus Smart and Jaylen Brown and Jason Tatum. But I feel like this award would have been more rewarding to a guy like Caleb Martin, a guy that nobody expected to come onto the scene and have an outburst like this on one of the biggest stages in basketball. And so, all the credit in the world to Jimmy Butler for winning this award. I think, he's had a tremendous playoff run. And I feel like, they kind of just, like Abdi said, I think they just kind of gave it to him based on the run that he's had, but not necessarily the Eastern Conference Finals performance that he had. And I feel like it would have been better suited for a guy like Caleb Martin, a guy who came onto the scene, has had a tremendous playoff run himself, but kind of stepped up big when they needed him to in the Eastern Conference Finals. But nonetheless, the Miami Heat, they get the job done. They take care of business. Although it took them a lot longer than expected, at the end of the day, they're here now, and now they look forward to an NBA Finals run, a championship game against the Denver Nuggets on Thursday night.
Record a new hit, then we making us a film. Wouldn't sign a deal if I got a couple mil. Been in the lab, now they throwing out deals. Me and now H, now that's overkill.